Late, but I'd like to welcome you all to our third installment of the Black History Month program. It's the 2015 Commemorating the Life of Booker T. Washington event. What that means is that 100 years ago this year, Booker T. Washington passed on November 14th, 1915. And we're having a year-long reflection on the accomplishments of Booker T. Washington, and most of the topics that we have this month are geared toward that relationship between Booker T. Washington and things that he was involved with. I appreciate your attendance today. We have a great speaker. I've known her for a long while. She is a diligent researcher and a very kind and gracious lady. Married to a kinder and gentler husband, I think. I like Willie too, but I'm just joking. You know that because I think Doris-Jean. We call her Jean around the archives because I don't know why I started calling her that, but it just seemed to fit her. She looks like a Jean to me. But anyway, we're going to let Sherry Argo introduce her this morning. And she's going to give us some background, then we'll turn the charges of the services over to Doris-Jean.
I didn't know I was going to be doing this morning, but I feel honored to do this because I'm a personal friend of the family and have been that way for about 25 years, so I feel like I'm part of the family. But this this is Doris-Jean Peake and her husband, Willie Peake, and her family and friends are here with her. She's a lifelong resident of Montgomery, graduated from Lanier High School, Huntington College, and Auburn University. She has always been involved in education. She works through Old Alabama Town for years and years, and she just did a lot of research there, and she taught 5th grade at Davis Elementary, which is a challenge in itself, 5th graders, if you know, and she's always been interested in history. She worked on her book. She's been working on this book for about 3 years, I believe, and through her research for the book became this program. And we've talked about it before, and she's very eager to share her knowledge, and she's always been involved, as I said earlier, in education. She and her husband were PTA presidents when their girls were in Lee High School, so you can see that this is just kind of ingrained in her, this research and love to share her knowledge. And without any further, Darsh-Jean, DJ, is what I call her.
Thank you, Sherry. Thank you, Sherry. She is an educator also, and there are other educators in this room, and one of them, Margaret Hickson, and I worked together down at Old Alabama Town. We did classes for the children down there, and we did seminars for the teachers, and I think we did that for about 12 years, didn't we, Margaret? But thank you, Sherry, and I am very happy to be here. I've enjoyed working with Dana and with Way and with the different ones, Ms. Middleton, different ones in the archives. That is, over here, is one of the most complete archives you would ever want to do research in. It is just one of the finest anywhere. So I'm very happy to be here today. The Movable School is when the program first got underway, the phrase, the Movable School, referred to one vehicle, the Jessup Agricultural Wagon. As the years passed and one wagon was replaced by another, the Movable School referred to the program supported by Tuskegee Institute and Alabama Polytechnic Institute. In time, there were three wagons. The Jessup wagon was replaced by the Knapp wagon, and then the Booker T. Washington agricultural truck came along. And so the Movable School is more of a concept, a program now, even though it started out as the one wagon. The fascinating story of the Movable School program begins with the close of the American Civil War in the spring of 1865. Freed slaves and their former masters in Macon County each struggled with vastly different economic and social conditions. A rumor circulating in political circles around Washington, D.C. and the defeated South proposed a plan that would give 40 acres and a mule to freed black males. However, the proposal never materialized in Congress, and in its place, the Southern Homestead Act was passed in 1866. It offered land for sale to blacks, but few could afford or were even allowed to buy farmland. Excuse me. The act was repealed in 1876, and the struggle of former slaves to survive in a world far different from anything they had ever known caused them merely to exchange one form of slavery for another. According to historian Lucelle Griffith, their lives, the former slaves, were changed the most of any at that particular time. Millions of men, women, and children were destitute, and it has been estimated that there were 4 million. That's a lot of people. 4 million were destitute and looking for ways to survive. Some were hired by their former owners who needed workers and were paid wages, but not enough to care for families. Homeless and facing starvation, dirt farmers and sharecroppers lived on land they did not own and had no hope of ever owning. Worn-out land had been planted in cotton for so many years, it was depleted of nitrogen, a fertilizer, and could not grow healthy crops to sell or put food on the table. Poor people trying to till poor land lived in miserable poverty for decades, and this is a quote from Pascal. In 1881, Principal Booker Talfario Washington came to Tuskegee, Alabama, and immediately began the arduous task of building a college. 2 men in Tuskegee, one a former slave owner, George W. Campbell, and one a former slave, Lewis W. Adams, petitioned the Alabama State Legislature for funds to establish a normal school, a college similar to Hampton Institute in Virginia, to train teachers in Tuskegee. The grant from the state was for $2,000 a year and could be used only to pay instructors' salaries. A request to the president of Hampton for a leader to come to Tuskegee resulted in 25-year-old Booker Talfario Washington coming to Alabama, where he spent the rest of his life. He died when he was just 54. 54 years old, and is buried along with members of his family in a simple cemetery next to the church up here. You can stop and go through the small cemetery there if you'd like to. While students made bricks, constructed the first buildings, and attended classes, Principal Washington traveled in his buggy to remote areas of Macon County and discovered isolated farm families barely surviving in deplorable living conditions. Farm families, several generations of one family were crowded into 1- and 2-room cabins. Illness was a factor in almost every ramshackle cabin he visited. Small children slept in the same room with patients of TB and other infectious diseases. Inadequate food supplies contributed to malnutrition for the whole family. Lack of proper clothing was a problem for the whole family. 11 years later, in 1892, Professor George Washington Carver became head of the agricultural department. He joined Washington in his efforts to find and help neglected and mostly forgotten former slaves. While the school grew in size and enrollment, more teachers joined the faculty, and Principal Washington and Professor Carver turned their attention to the needs of the people they found deep in the woods surrounding the school. Washington envisioned conferences where farmers and their wives could come to the campus once a year, and instructors, led by Carver, would teach better farming methods and better home management skills. Hundreds of farm families attended the first Farmers' Conference on February the 23rd, 1892. Hundreds more stayed away because they had no way to travel or they felt they would not fit in. The others were more educated and better dressed, and they did not feel comfortable coming to the conference. Washington and Carver questioned themselves. What could they do to reach the man farthest down? They agreed that if the farmers would not come to the school, they would have to take what Tuskegee had to offer to the farmers. To do so, they needed a special kind of wagon. Principal Washington asked Professor Carver to design a simple wagon that students in the carriage house of the college could build. The wagon would be loaded with farm equipment and supplies and driven by Tuskegee teachers into the countryside. Washington's philosophy Washington's philosophy was to teach by demonstration, not lectures. And this is a sketch of Professor Carver's wagon that he drew for Booker T. Washington had no money to spend on a wagon, but he had wealthy friends who were willing to donate money. Excuse me. He was not reticent to ask for funds for whatever reason he deemed necessary to improve the lives of his people. One of his friends was Morris K. Jessup, a New York banker. With Carver's plans for the wagon in his hand, Washington rode the train from Alabama to New York and came home with $674.50. The first purchases that they figured they would need were 2 mules for $355, harnesses, and they made the harnesses in the carriage house for $40, wagon materials for $190.50, a cream separator for $75. Now the cream separator was like a big bowl. It had 2 spigots. The raw milk would come out of one spigot, the cream would come out of the other, and of course it was separated that way. 2 crates, a churn, and there's a picture of the churn over here on the board, and a cultivator. The churn was $5, well the crates were $5, the churn was $5, and the cultivator was $4. Different kinds of equipment fit into the bed of the wagon. A cow could be loaded into a crate and used to demonstrate proper care of livestock. Now, all of this is in the Jessup wagon, the very beginning of the program. Shelves on the wagon were built to hold specimens of garden plants. Rolled up canvas curtains protected the interior from the weather. Now, look to the right, top picture, and that is the carriage department. And they're building the Jessup wagon. If you look closely, you can see the Jessup agricultural wagon that they're building there. The bottom picture is the completed wagon. And you'll see it's a wagon pulled by 2 mules. And there are 2 men on the wagon who take the wagon out into the countryside. On May the 24th, 1906, the Jessup wagon pulled by 2 sturdy mules left Tuskegee Institute campus on a mission of service. George Bridgeworth was the first director. Within a few, and he figures into the program later on too. Within a few months, Principal Washington appointed a graduate of Tuskegee, Thomas Monroe Campbell, to be in charge of the program. He took over the operation of the Movable School on November the 12th, 1906, as the, and this is his quote, the first Negro agent to begin extension work in agriculture in the United States. A monument was placed on the campus to commemorate his appointment. And because of his dedication, Mr. Campbell's dedication and hard work, the Tuskegee Movable School became known throughout the world. Now, look at the wagon. That's the beginning of the Movable School. And over here on this board, my husband and I went out to Diamond Grove, Missouri, a couple of years ago to Carver's birthplace. And they had, we couldn't find it when we went there, but they had a replica of the wagon out there, and I have a picture of it there. I think it would be great if we could talk somebody into building a replica of the wagon, Dana.
There is one now.
Oh, there is?
Yes, it's
Here?
It's at the Carver Museum.
Oh, I haven't been there to see that. Good. Well, I encourage you to go to the museum, too, and see that.
Pardon? Somebody said something?
I just said it's lovely.
It is.
Well, that's one of my stops then, to go. I've been over there many times, but it's been a while. Now, this is Thomas Monroe Campbell. And this is the monument on this site, November the 12th, 1906. Thomas Monroe Campbell, the first Negro agent, received notice of his selection by Dr. Booker T. Washington and Dr. Seaman A. Knapp, USDA, to begin extension work in agriculture, and it was erected in January 1952. And right now, we don't know where that is, do we, Dana? But we're gonna look for it. We're gonna find it, because it certainly is worth commemorating his appointment. On May the 24th, 1906, and that's the year that Mr. Campbell graduated from Tuskegee. On May the 24th, 1906, the Jessup wagon, pulled by 2 sturdy mules, rolled away from the Tuskegee Institute campus on a mission of service. George Bridgeforth was the first director. A teacher from the school accompanied him. The day was partly cloudy, no rain, and a slight breeze. The high was 77, an ideal spring day. Now, let's think about this scenario taking place more than 100 years ago. This is truly, truly a moment of high drama. Just picture it in your mind. This is a moment of high drama. A simple wagon and 2 mules. It's a stretch, but if I were an artist, I would paint this scene of a large farm wagon being pulled by 2 mules across that plain out there. That is the same plain that Auburn's a part of. The plain extends the short distance down the road to Auburn University. Sweet Auburn, the loveliest village on the plain. How many of us have ever heard that? It is part of Auburn. And that was part of a poem by the Irish poet Oliver Goldsmith. It could be Sweet Tuskegee, because it is the same plain. That lone wagon on that shared common plain developed into a farm extension program that became well known around the world. We can imagine students, perhaps even Washington and Carver themselves, standing beside the road watching, more than likely cheering as the high drama unfolded. How far did the wagon travel? Where was their first stop? And what did the teachers say? Truly, truly high drama over 100 years ago. Within a few months, Principal Washington appointed a recent graduate, as I've said, Thomas Monroe Campbell, to be in charge of the program. He took over the operation of the Movable School on November the 12th, as the monument says, as the commemoration says. A monument was placed on the campus, and we're looking for it. If anybody stumbles over it, let us know where it is. Yes.
You're talking about the marker for Thomas Campbell?
Yes,
It's at the Chambliss building.
Ah, Miss Middleton. Good. The Chambliss building.
It's at the Chambliss building.
Where is that?
It was formerly the Chambliss Children's House, a grade school on the campus, below the Emory's and across from the Chappie James building.
Oh, Well,
That's right.
Where the airplane sits, it's right across from where the airplane is.
well, we found it. Thank you, Miss Middleton. In time, plows, cultivators, harrows, and other up-to-date farming tools were loaded on the Jessup wagon. The teachers told the eager farmers that they would learn to use equipment they had never seen before. Many of the farmers had been scratching the ground with a worn-out plow pulled by a half-starved ox. The teachers demonstrated a plowing method that was faster than anything the farmers had ever seen. Each farmer wanted to take turns turning over the dirt. Preparing the soil properly led to maintaining kitchen gardens that produced a variety of nutritious food the farm families did not have to buy in cans in town. And there's a story about Booker T went to town and bought a lot of cans of vegetables and foods, and he brought them back out to some of the places where they stopped, and he showed the people who were taking part in the Movable School that they didn't have to go to town and spend their money on these cans. They could grow their vegetables and they could can them. And that was one of the things that he was very adamant about in getting the people to help themselves as much as they could. Because of his dedication and hard work, the Tuskegee Movable School became known throughout the world. When the first month the Jesus Wagon was in service, more than 2,000 people gathered around to see the demonstrations. This is the Jesus Wagon, and you can see all the people gathered around to learn from the teachers and also to see what was there on the Jesus Wagon that they could use. Word of the wagon from the college soon spread throughout the county. In 1918, the Jesus Wagon was worn out and broken down and was taken out of service. And for a while, this wagon was on the campus. It was on display at one time. But look at the difference in the wagon that started out on that nice spring day and 12 years later when it had to be taken out of service. The mission of the Movable School was continued without interruption with a motorized truck purchased in 1918 with funds provided by Alabama Polytechnic Institute. Some of us remember when it was called that, API, which we now, of course, call Auburn University. The new truck was named for Dr. Seaman A. Knapp of the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Edie, that is the one that I know the most about. This one, we'll look up the others too. He devoted much of his life to improving farming in the South. Excuse me. He was instrumental in guiding Principal Washington and Professor Carver in establishing the concept of demonstration farming at Tuskegee. His, as well as Washington's, personal philosophy was to teach by demonstration, not lectures. And his son, Dr. Bradford Knapp, was the president of Alabama Polytechnic Institute, now of course known as Auburn University, from 1928 to 1933. And Edie knows of another Knapp that we're going to look up and see if we can find the connection with the families. The Knapp truck made its first trip from Selma. The Knapp truck made its first trip from Selma to a gathering in West Dallas County. Extension agents made an effort to show farmers who had fruit orchards how to control diseases and insect pests attacking the trees. Instead of giving lectures about how to care for the trees, the agents loaded orchard tools in the truck and the farmers did the actual work of pruning and spraying. Farmers learned to inoculate hogs, and that's what they're doing here, to prevent the spread of cholera. And the other photograph, can't really tell what they're doing, and if you know, tell us. It looks like, right up here in the middle of the picture, It looks like an acetylene torch. And my dad had an acetylene torch, and I watched him with it for a long time, but I don't know what in the world he was doing. Do you know, Dana?
No, I don't.
That's another thing we're still looking for. Unique demonstrations were done for women. Bread was made from sweet potatoes, peanuts, and pumpkins to save wheat. They made starch from green corn and cold water soap from bones and skins that were usually put in the garbage. They found ways to use just about everything. Fireless cookers were taken into fields to provide hot meals for workers. After 5 years, the Knapp agricultural truck rolled along. Oh, excuse me, let me back up a minute. This is the Knapp truck. And this particular one, it's a gathering, of course, of the people. And this particular one is has the cow that they will tell the people about. And the cow probably was in one of the crates, was carried around in one of the crates that was put on the Jesus Wagon and then on the Knapp wagon. And then the Knapp wagon was only in service for 5 years. And you could look at this one and see that it's been over some rough roads. It's been used, and people have come to see about the demonstrations, about the different tools and the different items that were used. In 1918, it was time for a new vehicle. During the transition from the old to the new, rail travel was used to move equipment and supplies from place to place. But rail cars could not always get to the places they wanted them to go. They couldn't get close enough to the remote communities. So another larger motorized truck was put in service once money was raised and the newer, more modern truck was built. And this is the way they advertised getting a new truck. A great campaign has been launched by the farmers of Alabama to build an agricultural motor truck to the memory of the late Booker Washington for the purpose of traveling among the colored farmers to give first-hand information in dairying, livestock raising, gardening, and all lines of touching the life of the colored farmers. Each county in which extension workers are employed has been assessed for building and maintaining the truck. Bullock County's quota, of course we're in Macon County, but this was expanding out into other counties also. Bullock County's quota is $175. Campaign begins January the 14th, 1922. I will call on every businessman, farmer, firm, corporation, church, school, teacher, minister, and fraternal organization for a donation to such a worthy cause. They just went out and asked them, almost just told them that what they were going to do. Every person donating will be given free a beautiful portrait of the late Booker Washington. Every patriotic citizen will help to put agriculture in Bullock County on a paying basis. And Harry Sims of Tuskegee Institute has been selected as custodian of all funds. And this was put out by M.B. Ivy, who was a local demonstration agent. I think I said this. The rail cars could not always get close enough to remote communities, so they had to get another truck. This is a drawing of the Booker T. Washington Agricultural School on Wheels. And this one was built by the Hobby Motor Company in Montgomery. I've heard of the Hobby Motor Company, but I really don't know a whole lot about it. But it was built in Montgomery. Now, this is the truck in the field. And let's see if I can make this work. We think that's Thomas Monroe Campbell. And they dug a deep hole there. And we don't know what they're doing. We don't know what that's for. But it's something important that is being demonstrated for the farmers who are there. Anybody know what that is? Dana, you know what it is?
Sweet potatoes.
Sweet potatoes? Banking sweet potatoes, of course. That would be a good idea. Yeah. Good. Thank you. Now, the next one, that is the same truck, the Booker T. Washington Agricultural School on Wheels. This is T.M. Campbell. This is a nurse, and this is an assistant. And you can see how the truck was put together, again built by Hobby Motor Company in Montgomery. This is another configuration of the truck. Same name, but it's quite different. I don't know how to go backwards with this, Dana. There it is.
Okay, that's right.
I just chose one. You can see the difference in the trucks. And one of the things I read about the truck is that it was on the same chassis, but it was a different truck. I don't know that for sure. But it is named the same truck. Whoops. Now, and this is the truck that's in the Carver Museum. And I encourage you, if you have time, to go over to the Carver Museum and look at this truck. And this is the inside of the truck. And you can see it's pretty large. They could get a lot of things in there. And this is the view from the side. It's still different looking, but since it is called the same name, even though there were different trucks, they're all thought of as the Carver Agricultural School on Wheels. Now, we mentioned the Fireless Cooker a few pictures back. Fireless Cooker and canning jars. This huge wooden bucket lined with sawdust kept the contents of the inner pot warm by use of a heated stone in the bottom. A farm family could take food to the field and enjoy a hot meal at lunchtime. Use of the Fireless Cooker was one of the skills taught to farm women by home demonstration agents. These women were also taught how to can and preserve their homegrown fruits and vegetables. Now, can you tell how it's used? That's looking down. I took this picture over in the museum. That's looking down. I keep trying to point that out. That's the rock that they heat, put in the bottom of the can or container there, and this is just cardboard around the top, and this is sawdust. And this is the top on its side, and the other this goes on the top, and here's another one that could go on the top. And they put that top on the top of the I'm calling it a can, a bucket, and the hot rock keeps it warm. Now, what does that remind you of that we use today? What? Crock pot. That's a modern crock pot. Except they talked about cooking, but that rock would have to be mighty hot to cook a whole lot. But anyway, I think that's an ingenious way of getting a nice warm meal and making sure that they had a nutritious meal. Let's see. And that's another, you can see another little bit of, I want y'all to make sure you knew about these Fireless Cookers. I'm fascinated with the Fireless Cookers. And over to the side, that's what the, over there, to keep the food. Now that's in the case over there, and they is just telling more about the Fireless Cooker. It looks like an ice cream freezer, they're sturdy like that. Now this is the kind of group that the Fireless Cooker would have benefited. The people would have benefited from the Fireless Cooker. Also, they had a volleyball and net in the Booker T wagon. No school is complete without recess, and the Movable School was no exception. Each afternoon, the farmers and their families were assembled for organized play, which taught the advantages and benefits of recreational exercise. This also is in the museum over here. That's the volleyball net and the volleyball that they used for all ages to enjoy the games that were on the wagon. This is a motion picture machine, and they would show educational pictures, and I imagine they showed some other kinds of movies for the people who were out there, but that was something new for these people. And this shows how Booker T and Professor Carver tried their best to bring the modern things to the people who were taking part in the Movable School program. Now, this is an important statement about George Washington Carver's success. I think that the inventions of George Washington Carver are an important part of society today. I think all of the inventions that George Washington Carver invented are of great use today. He invented organic fertilizer, which helps the soil to be richer for crops to grow. He discovered the preservation of crops for the winter, and this helped the farmers store food during the winter. Also, he showed the farmers how to rotate their crops to save the soil. This is one of the very, very important things, is rotating the crops to get the fertilizers and the nitrogen back into the soil. However, the most important discovery and invention thought up by Dr. Carver was to show the poor farmers how to take care of themselves. He showed them how to plant sweet potatoes, peas, and peanuts. These crops are wonderful to eat and can be eaten all year long. Dr. Carver made sure that the poor farmers would have proper nutrition even in the wintertime by planting crops that would last the winter. The conclusion: modern day farmers owe much to Dr. Carver's discoveries with crops. crop rotation, soil, and organic soils. His discoveries made farming easier, faster, and more efficient. This next picture shows the Movable School program after it had been in effect for 50 years. You can see on the right the Jesus Wagon, and you can see on the left the Booker T. Washington wagon in one of its modern configurations. This was in 1931 when this was put together. And that building on the right is the church that used to be there, and now the other more modern church is there. And other wagons were used. This is just a wagon, but it's a vegetable wagon. And different wagons like this were taken around the farm here on Tuskegee and in other places where the people were taught how to grow vegetables. Tuskegee Institute Vegetable Wagon. Now, this is one of the advertising pamphlets that was put out by the school. And if you look at it, starting at the top where the young lady is there, it says infant care. Going to the right, diversified crops. In the middle there is nutrition, sanitation, home improvement, screening, care of the sick, and clean milk. This was the way to advertise the Movable School. And this shows a mother with a healthy baby, the result of the school. And this is, the bottom one is the agricultural trust, the Booker T. Washington Agricultural Trust. The idea of the Movable School spread to places as far away as China, India, and South Rhodesia. In Carver, and I think I'm pronouncing that correctly, Albania, government officials developed the donkey school, which went into isolated villages and helped people poorer than the farmers of Macon County. Shortly before he died in 1943, Professor Carver said that his most memorable achievement was the Movable School. He believed that he and Principal Washington had succeeded in helping those who needed it most.
Very informative, very informative. Do we have any questions? We've got just a few minutes for questions, and if you have them, she's the one to ask. Yes, ma'am.
When did the program end with the going out to the farmers?
In 1944. It was in operation for 38 years.
Any reason why it went away, or did it, have a new incarnation?
No, of course that was during the Second World War, and the farm extension extended through the farm extension agents. They had better transportation, and they had better ways of setting up programs for the farmers, and they just felt like that they were doing everything they could do, and the farmers could come in to the different programs that were offered to them.
Seaman Knapp who had started this idea. Actually, Thomas Campbell is the first extension agent, period. Black or
In
white.
spite of what Texas says.
Yeah, despite, well, that's been disproven. Forget that. That was a local county guy that they just kind of sort of hired. But anyway, Thomas Campbell was the first hired by the United States Department of Agriculture. He was paid by them. And the extension service evolves over the years to the point where this no longer becomes a priority. It's the work has actually taken over by the extension service, and out of that we have a lot of things like George Washington Carver writing his bulletins and things of that nature. So about 1944, towards the end of World War II, a lot of resources had been directed toward other things, at that time, and the extension service had really taken off, and they had developed clubs and things like that throughout the nation, and spread rather quickly. So the idea of a movable school no longer became, it probably could have still served a bit of a purpose, I think, but I don't think that, I think it was over time, the administration saw that this extension service that was going on would be more beneficial.
And both Booker T. Washington and, well, he died in 1915.
Right. This year.
This year. And Carver died. So, and there were a lot of people who were interested in it and running it. Any other questions? I hope you will take a moment to come over and look at some of these other pictures. There's the churn. Oh, and there's a picture down there in the bottom corner of some little boys who have made fly swats. And they're holding them up. And then different pictures of the different vehicles. And there's one down here that is a painted bus. And it too is a mobile kind of wagon, bus. There's some others there too. I think some of the others I had on here, but anyway, there are lots of things to learn about the Movable School. Any other questions?
Thank you again, Doris-Jean. We appreciate it so much.
Thank you.
I encourage you to attend the next program, which will be next Tuesday, when we'll have one of our students present again. We had a really good program yesterday, presented by Megan Dubose. Did a really good job. She was kind of nervous a little bit, but she carried through it, and I think she did a very good job. Next Tuesday at 10 a.m. here in this place, we have Tashara Steed, who will be talking about Through the Eyes of the President's Wife, Margaret Murray Washington, and Lynching. And it's going to be a really good and interesting program. I think you're going to like it a lot. The topic is, I guess, not a wonderful thing, but the information that she has to give us. She's actually surprised us and come up with some pretty neat ideas, a couple of things that we weren't expecting. So we're really looking forward to that. It shows what kind of students that we have here on campus. We have some amazing students. We really do. And we're so proud that they're taking part in the Black History Month program. Then on Wednesday, we'll be followed by Dr. Robert Zabawa, and he's here with us right now, and he will be speaking about Booker T. Washington, the founding of the cooperative extension at Tuskegee University. So we'll get some more information to fill in the blanks after this display. So we're looking forward to seeing him and having him here. I'd like to thank Dr. Reuben Warren for being here today and for his help in getting this venue and allowing us the opportunity to put on these programs here. It certainly is important that we utilize this space in a way that's beneficial to all, and we really appreciate it, Dr. Warren. Thank you so much. Is there anything that you'd like to say, sir?
This is just powerful. It's just really to be a part of it.
Thank you, sir. And of course, again, I want to say that this is just part of the ongoing commemoration that will transport us into hopefully a more clear understanding of the role of Booker T. Washington, how important that role really was. And we're going to see more and more that it went beyond Tuskegee, the influence of Booker T. Washington, and it will culminate with a symposium on November the 15th and 16th of next year, 16th and 17th of this year, where we'll have a symposium, a re-examination of Booker T. Washington and his life and work. So we're looking forward to that opportunity also. If nothing else, thank you for coming and being a part of this today. Have a good day.